This is an opportunity to thank each and every one of you for joining our show again today. Remember, we're a live call-in show. Our phone number is 833-653-3529 to call us directly on the Zoom link. That's 833-653-3529. Now, before we get started today, I have my superstar panel, attorney Vanita Banks and Milton will join us. But before I get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank the 97,653 people that turned out to vote. That was about 25% of the registered Democrats in Marion County. And so we have to improve on that number in order to be successful in future elections. We need to get that number. There's like about 400 and I was trying to do the math, about 430,000 registered Democrats and about 97,000 voters. So we need to get that number up closer to 400,000 in order to be successful in statewide election. Statewide elections are important because the state has a supermajority in the legislators, and that has resulted in some draconian laws that adversely affect your interests here in Indianapolis. Like, for example, the gun laws. We have shootings every day because we have open invitation for anyone to own guns. It's the dumbest legislation I've seen in a long time. And so one of the contested issues in the last election was the proliferation of gun violence by a person whose political party sponsored the legislation to increase gun violence. So keep that in mind, folks. And we have some exciting topics to cover today. And there's so many salient cases in the news, and so we'll get right into it. But before we do that, we have a caller. We had some legislation recently that I saw in the paper about smart cities. Hey, caller, did you review the legislation about smart cities? What's that about?
Good morning, Mr. Lee. I looked at it, and I'm hoping to get some clarity, maybe from your listeners and even you, to understand what smart cities are all about. From what I can gather, it looks like these are going to be like cities that are run by a super HOA. They aren't really elected officials, but they're appointed by the members of the community, and they pretty much essentially kind of monitor everything that's going on in the community in terms of your phone service. They even know they have access to your credit scores, from what I'm understanding. And they're springing up all around the country. I was somewhat surprised because our city county council the other day had signed a bill into law that basically would allow the Monument Circle area and I guess all the facilities that are attached to it in terms of Mass Ave and some of the development that's going on would be part of what they would consider to be similar to what they call a smart city. So I wanted to get some clarity on that. I know it's fairly new, successful for the mayor to be reelected to do the things he said he was going to do in his second term. But now this is a new one that's coming up, and I think it will probably impact future elections for the city of Indianapolis going forward if we have more of these smart city type operations that spring up around in the donut counties around Marion County that could change the way things go.
Well, I looked in that very briefly, caller, and see, it's got some positive. There's some federal money being used. It got a variety of usage, but I didn't like the way the legislation is crafted. It's like 4 of the 8 members appointed by the state Republicans, and that didn't make any sense to me. But the second thing is I like the idea of providing more housing for homelessness. And Indianapolis got a wonderful program that they use. Downtown Indy, we have these ambassadors. They city ambassadors, they walk around, and all they do, they're good Samaritans. If you're lost, you need help with anything, they will help you direction or whatever your situation might be, they're there. We have people that walk constantly downtown. They remove all trash. One of the problems that I see is that there's some trifling people, they just drop trash everywhere, where these people come along and they pick up trash and stuff. So I think it's a good thing. But the part I don't like is that they're going to charge fees, like look like about 1.5% property tax assessment for property owners. And to pay for this program. So a small tax increase, but if we could get rid of the homelessness problem in our city, then I'm all for it, because I don't like to see people on the street during the wintertime.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious. I mean, I think that's a good Samaritan program as we start out, but could it lead to something else in terms of more or less polarizing even more so what we have in the city between one party or the other, and taking full control, basically, with the party taking over one party taking over the entire city, taking over the state as well. And these little pocket communities that they spring up, these little smart cities, could they be an influence for the people that, if they're paying a little extra on their property taxes to live there, then they may feel like my vote counts, and we want everybody in this community to vote the same way. Just kind of a thought, something that just cropped up over the last 72 hours, post victory for the mayor rather.
Well, we need to congratulate the mayor. He won by a wide margin. He got 97,653 votes. The Republican, who spent about $15 million, got 66,683 votes. The problem I had is we have 400 and about almost 40,000 registered Democrats in Marion County, and 97,603 voted. So I want to thank the folks that voted, but I'm trying to think we got to do a lot better than that in future election. If we want to protect democracy, we got to get people off their posterior and get out the vote. I mean, that 22% is not acceptable, for such an important election. There was a lot at stake in the last election. I'm glad that we won in terms of Democrats. We have diversity within our public sector employment, like the police and fire department fought for years to try to ensure we had diversity, and it could have all went down the drain with a change in administration. Everybody forget that when the Republican took over the mayor's office, the first thing he did was pay the white police officer a settlement for reverse discrimination, despite the fact that we proved that they discriminated against Black officers. The white officers all got paid. It was insulting, quite frankly, to settle the bogus lawsuit. They didn't even contest it. Whereas they contested the Black officers. The only way we got relief is that once we got a Democratic mayor, then the upper ranks in the department now is about 40% African American, which we've done fantastic in that regard. And everybody seemed to forget. Why was that an important issue in our city? Well, the way that we were treated as citizens, excessive force was routinely used, and they got away with it. So don't forget about that. So make sure that next election you get your friends and family members to vote. Well, thank you very much, caller.
Okay, and that is so incredibly important, Attorney Lee, to continue to emphasize that we must vote in every election. And the biggest takeaway from last Tuesday's election was that we saw voters across the country reject extremist agendas. For example, in Ohio, voters codified the right to full access to an abortion and reproductive health care by 60% of the vote. We also saw in Kentucky in the governor's election that Governor Beshear was reelected, and that an interesting fact is that in Kentucky, the governor's race has predicted the winner of the presidential election in the last 5 election cycles. Some races weren't covered nationally. For example, Attorney Lee, I'm sure you're aware that our U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee from Houston, Texas, she's running for mayor of Houston, and she advanced to the December 9th runoff with State Senator John Whitmore. So we'll be watching that local election. And for the first time in Philadelphia's history, Sherelle Parker will become the first woman in 100 years and first African-American woman to be elected to serve as mayor of Philadelphia. So these were very, very important elections across the nation. And so again, voters vote, as President Biden said, and polls don't. And so it's clear that voters clap back against extremists in America.
Well, Counsel, you've held important positions. You know, you've been president of the National Bar of the Nation's oldest and largest Black attorney group. But the 800-pound gorilla in the room is that I'm sure you're well aware Marilyn Mosley got convicted, but there was like across the country, we saw the African-American prosecutor in Missouri get canned, Orlando, Florida get canned. You know, in Chicago, they went against the African-American prosecutor, and even Fannie Willis down in Atlanta. So there seems to be a pattern. We have these African-American female prosecutors. They're going after them. I was concerned, Counselor, about the way this case played out. The attorney prosecutor got convicted because she took money out of her pension account to buy her a secondary housing. And she had to sign an affidavit that she was affected by the coronavirus. And they said she was convicted of signing a false document to get her own money out of her account. And I was troubled by this prosecution, you know, because it's one of those discretionary type prosecution. If it's her pension money and she decided to get it out, I mean, it's just idiotic to me, just quite frankly. I don't understand it. Maybe you can.
I don't understand it either. And these are state pension funds. But at the federal level, they have what is called, quote, hardship withdrawals, right? And again, as you point out, Attorney Lee, it's your own pension fund, right? And if you prematurely withdraw, for example, you sustain a penalty, typically a 10% penalty, but a criminal prosecution, very strange to me. After a 3-day trial, she was convicted of 2 counts of perjury, making a false statement on a 3-page form to obtain $90,000, which was used to purchase 2 vacation homes in Florida. Those are the allegations, and that she untruthfully asserted, COVID-19 hardship in order to obtain, again, her own pension funds, right? During the pandemic. She alleged that she had suffered a hardship with respect to her travel business. And so it's just really a strange case. And you had mentioned earlier that she had sought a change of venue away from Baltimore in the case as well. So just really an interesting case, a strange case. And those 2 counts of perjury carry a maximum sentence of 5 years each. And of course, the federal sentencing guidelines may result in lower prison time.
Well, my concern is that I've had 190 jury trials, and I've had significant lying along the way, outright perjury that we prove, particularly by police officers in misconduct cases, a bunch of chronic liars. And recently I had a case we were doing that went up to appellate court up in out of state, and the defendant had hid material evidence, got caught, he and his lawyer, and we moved for sanction, and the judge denied it. Just outright perjury multiple times. The state had no interest in prosecuting somebody who we proved committed perjury, but yet in this case here, we have certain type perjurous conduct that harm people. And I'm trying to think, what is the harm of you getting your own money out of a pension account? You have less money when you get 65 or 70. So what? And that's what I was concerned about. I almost called Scott Bolden to find out what this was all about. And
I may still well call Scott Bolden.
You know, I like for you to, because I like to figure this out. I'm perplexed by this whole case. And but counselor, the same problem. The idiot governor, well, the governor of Florida removed the prosecutor from Orlando, saying that she was not doing a good enough job. She got elected by what 75% of voters or something, and he removed her from office. You know,
and that was a travesty as well, and that's illegal. And she is appealing that and running again for that same office. But we should all be outraged at how our African-American female prosecutors are being treated across this nation.
Yeah,
Fannie Willis, we're seeing Letitia James be subjected to outrageous and vitriolic claims from the former president. Absolutely unacceptable. And I'm looking at the Justice Department's statement in the aftermath of the of former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's conviction. Their statement, U.S. Attorney Eric Barron stated, "We respect the jury's verdict and remain steadfastly committed to our mission to uphold the rule of law, keep our country safe, protect the civil rights of all Americans, and safeguard public property." And according to the evidence, Ms. Mosley submitted a 457B coronavirus-related distribution request for one-time withdrawals of $40,000 and $50,000 respectively from her City of Baltimore deferred compensation plan. And that the trial evidence proved that she had falsely certified that she had met at least one of the qualifications for distribution under the CARES Act, specifically that she experienced adverse financial consequences from the coronavirus as a result of being, quote, quarantined, furloughed, or laid off, having reduced work hours, being unable to work due to lack of childcare, or the closing of or reduction of the business that she owned, and that she signed under penalties of perjury the statements and acknowledgments made in the request. And so they allegedly proved during this trial that she didn't experience any financial hardship, and they quoted, her gross salary during this time period. Really strange case. She's also facing 2 counts of making false statements on her mortgage application relating to the purchase of 2 vacation homes in Florida. And we're seeing the current trial in New York of the former president and the gross misrepresentations that he's made. And again, this is a civil case in connection with his assets, including his penthouse in New York and the valuation of Mar-a-Lago and his golf courses and other gross misrepresentations over the years.
And what I didn't understand it may be, what I don't get is that when we see these type charges, and this week we see the mayor of New York, Eric
Yes.
Adams, where the FBI went and searched his iPad and his computer and things based on an alleged campaign violation by one of his staffers. And I don't like this Justice Department run by Merrick Garland. I think by him saying that they're non-political, he becoming too political. And he's become too political by attacking and indicting Democrats. I think that this whole prosecution of Mosby, it's unsettling to me, quite frankly. The more I look at what occurred here, it bothers me that she'd take out $90,000 out of her pension fund. You could be prosecuted for that, because those pension rules are complex, and most lawyers don't go to law school and learn anything about pension rules. It's an esoteric area in the tax code that most people never read unless you're a tax lawyer or somebody.
Excellent points.
And so, and that's why that bothered me. And so I'm deeply troubled that she's charged. The whole thing to play out, so maybe you can track Scott Bolden down to find out what the heck's going on. But the other troubling thing that I saw this week was the mayor of New York, counselor. I saw where they came and subpoenaed, search warrant, went through his security and got his iPad and his computer to search the mayor's record. I've not seen that done before by the mayor of New York.
I saw that as well after the home of his staffer was searched. And apparently evidence was obtained in connection with alleged campaign violations, which initially the mayor was in DC attending a conference and immediately came back to New York. And then, of course, I guess yesterday, day before yesterday, his devices were taken as well. And he's been very, very clear that they follow the letter and the spirit of the law with respect to campaign finance contributions and that whole process. So we'll see what happens with that. But yes, I was very surprised to see that play out this week.
Yeah, they were saying that they were investigating for campaign contribution by the Turkish government to funnel money into his campaign coffers for his election. And, you know, we have limitations on donation to campaign. They want Americans to vote for American, to finance American campaign.
Right.
Then here's why this troubled me. Jared Kushner, who worked in the Trump administration, his son-in-law, got $2 billion from the Saudi government, $2 billion, right? And the Justice Department, at no time they announced they're investigating something like that. Now, he held an important position, and you don't get a large sum of money like that. So it seemed like to me that this Justice Department is becoming overtly political in the sense that they're trying to say that we don't prosecute, because we're prosecuting Trump, we're going to prosecute every possible Democrat, whether or not it has substantial merits or not. You know, they did that with the Hunter Biden case and looked like they run amok, but this type of selective prosecution, to me, is a little bit overbearing. Now, the next issue, though, is that we have, there were several other issues I thought was important. We had the Highland Park mass killer father plead guilty. What happened up there in your neck of the wood in Chicago land with that mass murderer case?
Attorney Lee, Robert Cremo, who was the father of the Highland Park mass killer, he pleaded guilty to reckless conduct this week, bringing the end of the case that was set to go to trial this week. And so he took a plea of 60 days in jail and 100 hours of community service. And you'll remember that he was charged after sponsoring his son's application to purchase a gun, notwithstanding the fact that this person had a history of mental illness and threats of violence against his own family. He had threatened to commit suicide. He had threatened his family, with guns. The police had responded to the family home several times, but never pressed any charges. Again, the case was set for trial on Monday, and Mr. Cremo's attorney stated that his client did not want to put the community of Highland Park through any further devastation. And so we saw this plea deal this week. And then, as you know, it's rare that parents are being charged for the conduct of their children. However, there are two cases that I've been following. We've discussed on earlier shows the parents in Michigan who are being charged with involuntary manslaughter as a result of the mass shooting perpetuated by their son. And then we also saw an Illinois parent. He received an 18-month prison sentence for giving his son a gun or a rifle in Michigan that he used in a mass shooting in Tennessee. So although rare, we're seeing law emerge and parents being criminally prosecuted for negligence and recklessness in connection with their children's mass shootings.
Well, as I remember, he used an AR-style rifle, automatic weapon, murdered 21 folks, shot 48 or something incredible. He tried to shoot everybody in sight. And I don't understand that. Sort of the father signed for this crazy son to get a weapon of mass destruction.
Yes.
And he's pleading guilty to misdemeanors. What was it? You have an insight as to why they dropped the felony charges? Wasn't this guy, the father, ran for mayor or something in that city?
He had earlier run for mayor in the city, very well-known family. And he pled guilty to a reckless conduct charge, which may well be a felony, Attorney Lee.
Yeah, I saw the charge was downgraded from felony to misdemeanors. And
okay.
Looked at the blot on it, but he'd get 60 days in jail and 2 years probation.
Certainly not enough time from my perspective. He sponsored his son's firearm ownership card, and his son was 19 at the time, so he needed parental permission in order to obtain this gun license.
Well, see, I have successfully collected proceeds where I've sued parents successfully for negligently maintaining their weapons and allowing their minor children to cause injury or death to to another person, right? So we hold the parents, our state law allows a limited amount of damages for against the parents when their kids commit harm to a third person. It's a limited damage recovery. However, we filed claims directly against the parents for their own negligence for allowing the minor child to have access to a weapon that result in injury or death. And a lot of people don't realize this is a negligent action and it's covered by your liability homeowners most of the time. And so we've been able to collect proceeds in these shootings. And so it'd be interesting to see what occurs in a case like this, because we have these mass shootings all over the country now. And but I was really sad by that shooting. I think it happened during 4th of July or something up in outside of Chicago.
It happened on the 4th of July, 2022 in Highland Park, which is a northern Chicago suburb. And the shooter, he killed 7 people during a parade, a holiday parade, and injured dozens of other citizens of Highland Park. His trial is set for later this year. And the father had been, his trial was set to commence, and there were 7 reckless charges that were criminal charges filed, each of which could have resulted in a 3-year prison term. And so I'm not quite sure what motivated the prosecutors to withdraw the felony counts. Sometimes that motivation, as you know, Attorney Lee, is based on whether they think they can actually, prove the case. But there were these 7 reckless conduct charges, each with a maximum of 3 years. So he pled to guilty to 1 count, resulting in a ridiculously low, from my perspective, 60-day jail term.
Wow. And moving forward, that certainly is not any significant deterrence in my mind.
I agree wholeheartedly.
That's just terrible. That we have what doesn't appear to be accountability. And there was some other significant cases that came across my desk. I sent a text to one of my lawyers in Michigan. I was trying to follow up on that Michigan football scandal. And it caught my attention because I'm a sports fan. But
and of course, we followed the career of Jim Harbaugh here in Chicago.
Yeah, he was a quarterback here in Indy, and so I followed his career. He's had an outstanding coaching career, and his team looked like the best team in the country for most of the season. I've been watching it, and I saw where they suspended him, and it was kind of bizarre to me, counsel, because I didn't know that it was illegal for one team to observe another team sign, because if I go to the game, I watch stuff like that. And in the NFL, they do communication. Attorney,
And what is quote sign stealing?
well, what happened is they have these super large football stadiums, and because the stadium's so large, you can't actually hear any information. Like when they do play calling, they have only so many seconds, about 30, 35 seconds in order to get the play in. But because there's so much noise, they give signs to the quarterback as to what play to call for the next series or the next down or the next series of down. And so what they allegedly said Michigan did, they had one of their workers go and take pictures and make notes. And so every sign that they gave on offensive defense, they know in advance. So during their play, when they see, like, for example, they do a certain sign and say that we're going to do an out pass, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They know what the play is, and then they could defend against the play more better because they know exactly what the play is.
The play is going to be.
And Nick Saban say, well, why don't we just give the quarterback the same type information they have in NFL? Just give them the receiver in their helmet, and you can just talk to the person. That solves the problem. Because as it turns out, I suspect that the majority of college football teams are doing the same thing. Why wouldn't they? I mean, and so I don't know. I thought that was kind of bizarre to me, but we'll see what happens. Attorney Grimes, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, Nate, I'm doing fine. I'm sorry I forgot to call in earlier, but I'm doing okay.
Well, in your city stays in the news about your homeless problem there. Your mayor is addressing it. I guess we have it in all cities, but particularly out in LA.
Yeah, we got a bad homeless problem, that's for sure, and it's increasing on a daily basis. I don't know what we're going to do about it. It's increasing across the country, though, isn't it? Don't just put it on LA.
Well, you got warmer weather there, so you have more homeless people there because you have a bigger population.
Yeah. I don't know what we're going to do about the unhoused. I see it as increasing. I just don't know.
Well, for the benefit of both council, in Indianapolis, they are doing a smart city legislation. I was looking at the components, and part of the component, I don't like the fact they're going to increase my property tax downtown, but one of the things they're doing is that they're going to increase housing for the homelessness. So they're going to try to have more spaces for people who are down on the luck, have no place to stay, and they're going to provide housing and food for folks that are in those circumstances. Now, here in Indianapolis, we have the trustee system in place, and that should be addressing this important issue by itself. So in each of our township, we have trustee offices, and they give you a hand up. They give you food, housing, pay utility bills, and things like that. And so I thought that would be great.
Nate, I guess what I was addressing is what the cause of the housing problem or the unhousing is, not what they are doing to band-aid it necessarily. There is some debate about building more housing, more smaller housing in areas, and people are protesting against that. But what are we going to do about the cause of unhousing was what I thought you were asking me. And there doesn't seem to be a solution that has been brought about yet, does it? I mean, our economy is supposed to be strong, but others say it's weak, and the unhousing is an example of that. So I don't know what to do. I don't know.
I gotta use the bathroom.
Please.
You know, one of the things that I've been reading about with respect to California is that, and I'm just looking at a statistic here, that California was 3.5 million housing units short, Attorney Grimes, of what's needed to accommodate the population. And even though California is losing population and building more housing, there's still a significant housing shortage. And to your point, it's true across the nation as well. So it really is a question, a holistic question, as you point out, Attorney Grimes. How are we going to address holistically the housing crisis that we have across the nation?
There is housing shortage for the people who are not unhoused, young couples. I mean, it's a high rise in cost for apartments and new homes. Yeah, we are losing. I don't know if you can hear me with that jet flying overhead, but we are losing people. They're moving out of California, but that doesn't seem to be affecting or balancing out with the people coming in. We have a housing crisis in California, believe it or not.
Let's take one quick caller. A caller, Ematech, you have a question or comment today, sir?
Hello, Brother Nate.
I'm glad you turned out to vote in the last election. We need your vote.
Yes, I did. And Attorney Grimes and Attorney Banks, thank you too. Also, yes, I did, brother. I just didn't like the local numbers. 664,000 eligible voters in Indianapolis, and only 164,000 voted, 26.7%. That's pretty pitiful. I want to see the demographics from 18 to 30, especially 18 to 30 Black. Attorney Banks and Attorney Grimes, that's the number me and my mother have been focusing on. That's the number I've been talking to, 18 to 30s, because we know that has been a problem. That age bracket, that age thinks that both parties are the same. If you listen to me, people, there's an article in thegrio.com. I think it was yesterday. I saw it this morning that said both parties are not the same. The Griot is a Black journalistic publication, Black people. Go read it and show this to young people, especially 18 to 30s, who have been inundated from Tariq Nasheed, from Dr. Umar Johnson, from others who say both parties are the same. It's not the same. And that's the problem I think the Democratic Party needs to show these wins they had the last election, especially from the school boards around the country. I thought that was significant, that the school board races around the country, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, many other places, turned back on this banning of books and all this draconian things that was going on. Very important. A lot of them are not involved with their children in the school board or in the schools politically, and they need to understand that is a very, very important process. Attorney Banks, I want to comment on your real fast, your comment on your Black female prosecutors being abused. I think I want to throw Kim Fox's name in there too. Kim Fox started the Conviction Integrity Unit in Chicago. She got many people off that shouldn't have been convicted, especially going back to I think it was Burge. If you want to go back to we know what happened with the Jesse Smollett situation. She was railroaded with that, which ended up finding out he got the same probation he would have gotten in the first place, which is what happens on the first time offense. So I think Kim Fox was done pretty wrong. Also, I like Kim Fox. I applaud Kim Fox. I applaud for what she's done there, and we want to throw her name in there too. Also, Kirsten Clark. Want to give her credit.
Yes.
The DOJ just went into Lexington, Mississippi this week. I read the AP article, and I went to the Mississippi, the Jackson paper down there. It's devastating what's going on down there in Lexington, Mississippi. The police just deal heavy-handedly with Black people. Nate, I talked to Deputy Chief Kendall Adams Sunday with Cameron Riddle on, and he keeps thinking the media makes them look bad when I read 30 to 40 papers and publications a week, and the media makes them look good. I told him that. And I told him, Cameron, that as a journalist, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's a journalist, said If your mother tells you she loves you, Journalism 101 says verified first. And I think the media does a poor job here in verifying the information. The police always gets the upper hand with the media, and the media got to realize they don't work for them. Washington Post says democracy dies in darkness. So we don't want that. Nate, I think you need to address that locally. I think you need to let them understand that they always get the upper hand because they're telling their story first. And most of the time, the person is dead, so they can't tell a story till we get forensics or get a autopsy back or something like that to see what may happen. So it's a big disconnect. Kirsten Clark talked about what went on down there. I want to applaud her. And then lastly, Ohio and Michigan, the Republican, the GOP, are challenging the will of the people. The voters decided they wanted abortion on the ballot, on the constitutions in those states. The voters decided they wanted marijuana legal in Ohio, and now they're filing cases and lawsuits to overthrow the will of the people. 18 to 30s got to understand no Democratic Party people have challenged book ban. Have done book bans or are challenging the will of the people just like that. So I just want to throw those out there. I know it's a lot, but we've got a lot going on. We've got to make sure the 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and all our 18 to 30s understand this is a real fight out here. And there is a difference. Biden is not perfect. No one is perfect, but there is a big difference between the Democratic and Republican Party. And thanks for taking my call.
Do you have anything else to say? I don't think you finished, did you?
He covered a lot of subject matters today. But
and all that, what all he said was very, very, very pertinent. I just want to address one thing. I don't know, Vanita and Nate, whether or not this social media that we are so enthused about and so applauding, I don't know if it's not distracted to our young people in what we probably only had 3 or 4 things to be attentive to and look at when we were growing up, and in their age bracket, they have hundreds of different things that they can be involved in, and they're always on social media. I mean, they sit down to lunch or dinner or breakfast, and they got their phone in front of them doing something. They own something, or they're doing a puzzle, or they're doing a game, or they're communicating with one another. So I admit that we don't have the attention of our young people as to their existence, the political situation. And I don't know if it's not too much information or stuff going on for them to look at every day. I mean, you would think that, hell, they got all of this information that's available. Why aren't they more attentive to the important things, the politics? And maybe it's just a distraction in that setup. I don't know. That's just my thought.
okay. We have several calls online. We'll take one of the callers for a couple minutes. Okay, caller, you had a question or comment for us today?
Oh, good morning, everybody. Going back to the prosecutors, the lady prosecutors. I think Mr. Bolden's team quit Merlin Mosby's probably because he wasn't getting paid. Probably didn't have any money to pay the man anymore. But that goes, you talk about political prosecutions. That thing was political from the jump street. And, he's not that kind of president. But if he really wanted to make a statement, Biden should pardon her immediately after she's sitting. Boy, that'd be something. But the homeless thing, Vanita, I just wanted to hear what's going on up in Chicago. I know the residents are up in arms over the migrants. And I recently saw in the news they dismantled another homeless encampment in LA. But, you're going to have to find housing for mentally disturbed people. And these states just don't want to fund hospitals for people with mental illness, because you got to get these mentally ill people off the streets and in housing. And I'll take it off the air. Thanks.
It's not as simple as it sounds. I worked with a mentally ill person, homeless, a few years ago, maybe 3 years or more ago. and we got her housing. And her friends came into that housing, and it took about a month before they booted her out and took over that apartment. She didn't want her own. She could not hold on to her own private housing without some caregiver being there with her 24/7. As it ended up, she died on the street last year, homeless and no housing. So when you talk about housing for mental illness, you got to do more than just house them. You got to treat them.
That's right.
Right.
That may be one of the underlying problems with the housing of them. You got to carry along the treatment necessary for them.
Nate, tell them about our central state, and I'll hang up. We had a hospital for mentally ill people, but they tore it down.
That's right.
Yeah, I could tell you, they had a lot of problems, resulted in a lot of lawsuits. And, I must admit, we filed some ourselves. They paid out a lot of money and the governor shut it down.
Mm.
And so the mentally ill folks were then left to be homeless. They're on the streets. And so it's a bad situation. Now, let's go to the next caller real quick, producer. Go ahead. Okay, caller, Ms. Perry, you have a question or comment for us today, ma'am?
I have a comment. I have a mental illness. I want to talk about mental illness and homelessness.
Go ahead.
Yes. I'm a part of an organization called Circle City Clubhouse. It helps people with severe mental illness.
I'm sorry, what's the name of your group? I missed it. What's the name of it?
Circle City Clubhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay,
and we're non-for-profit that specializes in helping those with severe mental illness get their lives back through a meaningful work order day. I think there's a lot of stigma with mental illness as well, and a lot of people feel alienated from society, and it causes them to be even more alienated and want to stay on the streets or want to become introverted inside themselves and feel hopeless. So when you have that kind of attitude, when you have that kind of feeling, you feel that there's no hope. So you walk aimlessly in the streets and don't get that support that you need. And I agree with the caller earlier. A lot of the reason why people are homeless is because they're not getting the required medication that they need, the required assistance that they need, the required social interaction with other people. A lot of people who have mental illness, myself included, want to be a part of something big, want to be a part of something that's social. We're social creatures, everybody, and everybody wants to feel inclusive and important. And when you don't have that, you're stigmatized in society, you tend to be introverted. And Circle City Clubhouse gives that opportunity for people with severe mental illness. When they walk in the door, we tell them, welcome home, no stigmas, no isolation,
what is your phone
rejection.
number? Hey, caller, because we got to run. What's your phone number for Circle City Clubhouse? What's their phone number?
If you can contact us at, this is the executive director, 317-709-8013. He's the executive director there. And there's no stigmas, I'll go quick. No stigmas, no isolation, no rejection, total acceptance. What you say, what you do, what you feel is important to us, you're valued, you're needed, and you're wanted. And people excel in that. They go to school, they get a job, just simply by washing tables, cleaning toilets. We encourage them to become janitors or in maintenance. And a lot of people excel. And we encourage people, even if they get up and get there, we applaud that.
Caller, we're out of time now, so we'll follow with you next week. I'd like to thank all our callers for calling in today and join us again in our VIP panel, Attorney Grimes and Banks. And I'd like to thank all the callers and all the citizens who voted. And happy Veterans Day for all the people that serve our great nation. And thank you for your service. Until next week, have a blessed day and have a great weekend. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you, veterans.
Goodbye.